Welcome to the Deep Light podcast from Park City's Presbyterian Church. This is a space for community, healing, hope, and education around topics of rescue and growth. Our prayer for this series is that it illuminates a deeper understanding of struggles within and around us, as well as God's profound love and redemptive light in Jesus Christ.
Well, hi everyone. I want to welcome you to another episode of Deep Light. My name is Mark Davis. I serve as one of the pastors of Park City's Presbyterian Church. And we just want to welcome you, whether you're watching or listening to us today. We are very grateful that you've tuned in. It's our deep desire to share with you the hope that we have in Jesus Christ. And as we walk through life and experience all sorts of challenges in this broken and beautiful world, we love to be able to hold out the hope that we have in Christ. Today, we're going to be continuing our conversation about addiction. This will be our last in a series that we've been doing. So if this is your first time to watch in this series, there's 4 or 5 of these episodes prior to this that really explain addiction and share pretty powerful stories of those who have been in addiction, as well as those who have walked with loved ones who have been in addiction. So we're just glad that you're listening or watching, and I hope that this brings you encouragement today as you hear a friend of ours' story of how God's done a wonderful work in his life. George, thanks for giving us time today.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I know it's incredible encouragement for other people to be able to just kind of eavesdrop on a conversation between 2 brothers to talk about what life is like and how you have found your hope in Christ in the midst of, real challenges that you've gone through.
Sure.
So let's start. Tell us a little bit about just who you are, your story. Where'd you grow up?
Okay.
What are the things that begin to shape who you are today? And then we'll move real specifically into just the journey as it relates to addiction.
Okay. Well, my name's George Thompson. I actually grew up here in Dallas, in the Park Cities. Went to Highland Park Presbyterian Church growing up.
Were you involved pretty much?
Just the youth stuff a little bit. Youth trips here and there.
Yeah.
I think a mission trip to Jamaica once was like the biggest kind of trip I've ever done. But other than that, it was, just went to church on Sundays. Went to Highland Park High School. So,
what year did you graduate?
2007.
Okay.
So, yes.
I got in 03, so you were, one of those first grades that I would have got to see graduate.
Okay, yeah. And I have a little brother who's, I think he graduated 09.
Okay.
But then sorry, I'm blanking a little bit.
That's all right. After you graduated, so then what happened? Where'd you go?
Well, I guess you asked something about shaping who I was. And high school was pretty impactful as far as what I focused my life on. Because I know, I like to say this because it kind of goes with my story, because my identity is kind of, it's changed because it wasn't in Christ, though I like to say it was. Especially in high school, because that's kind of what you did. That's what you do in the Park Cities.
Right.
You go to Highland Park schools. Say you're a Christian, you pick a sport or activity. You do what you can to get into a good college.
Yeah. All the normal things that seem normal
it's like
and right.
perform. Do well. Act like you do well when you're not as well.
Kind of fake it.
Oh yeah, big time. And I was good at being quiet. And so my identity was really just how to appear like I'm doing well. Sports was huge.
What was your favorite sports?
I played football all 4 years and lacrosse for a couple. And so I loved all sports, but I had to choose a couple because I'm not the greatest student, but so I wasn't able to kind of play them all, which is probably a good thing. Ended up just sticking to football.
So when you talk about an identity,
yes,
like you're coming out of middle school, going into high school, how aware were you of identity? How aware were you of, trying to figure out who I am?
In high school, I was not aware. What I was aware of was, okay, how do I blend in? How do I shape whatever it is I think people like and don't like and fit that mold without being too loud? because I was able to observe people that were too loud or too quiet and kind of just fit in the middle and not bother or not push people away entirely either. Does that make sense?
Sure.
And so, I mean, drinking was also kind of a part of the culture, but it wasn't I didn't really get into drinking in high school, just at least until, funny story is, I guess the first time I ever drank was in high school, was my sophomore year. And this would have been a great sign had I had a little bit more wisdom at the time, but I think I weighed like 130 pounds and just drank like 8 beers within an hour, and then tried to drive home and ran into a tree.
Wow.
And God put a tree right in front of a house, luckily. So that was
So you hit the tree instead of the house.
Exactly. Totaled my car and didn't touch alcohol because fear was that motivator to like, okay, let's not drink anymore. Drinking is bad. So we'll use this football contract that you sign every year that says you pledge not to drink or use tobacco, anything like that. And that was a great way for me to also be seen as someone who's kind of a good kid as well. Because I've always been like a good kid. I can play a good kid in high school. I can kind of stay out of trouble when I need to and present well. And so that was a great excuse at the time. So usually culture, to really answer your question, is culture really kind of Highland Park and of my friend group shaped my identity at the time.
Yeah, so it sounds like you were, and this doesn't sound uncommon, but you used the word observe. So you're observing what's kind of expected, what's acceptable, and then I need to perform up to whatever it is I'm observing.
Yeah, so I would look at what some people did, as far as some people would be a little bit too loud and kind of get made fun of. Other people would be too quiet and they get made fun of. And I would do anything I could to not be the center of attention, as far as, center of attention negatively.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be under a microscope. I always felt like I was, in general, even when I was just, sitting at my desk doing schoolwork. I always thought someone was watching, kind of thing. It was just like, it was very kind of paralyzing kind of fear of just trying to navigate high school and being liked and well received and trying to perform. And
but I think that describes so well how many people feel, not just in high school. I mean, even as adults living life, there's a profound fear that we have, and the less secure we are in an identity that's helpful, whole, beautiful, etc., then the more we're constantly moving with our eyes shifting, like, what do they think? I don't want to be like that. What about that? I'm not sure that. So it's exhausting, isn't it?
It was very exhausting. I was good at it in high school, but I had never run into any like serious consequences of trying to, I guess, fit whatever mold I was in. Trying to be a chameleon. And it wasn't until college that kind of really stopped working. And then even a little bit more into college, when things started going downhill really fast.
Yeah. So. Well, can we talk about that?
Of course.
Yeah. So where'd you go to school? When did things begin to shift in your mind where all of a sudden you began to see things going in a pretty bad direction?
So at the end of high school, no more football. I was able to start drinking, and that was like not legally, but I was able to drink without a contract.
Yeah. So the contract helped you. I mean, it was a reason you could say, I'm not going to do this now.
Yes, and there was only a couple of years between like my first time getting really drunk and then running into a tree and then, getting a really stern talking to from my parents and grounded and all those consequences.
I'm sure they were scared to death too, that happened.
Yes. I also think they, like a lot of parents, I think an addiction in general or alcoholism, that's my thing, is alcohol was what took me down. But they're kind of afraid to see just how much it affected me, how much I really kind of grabbed onto that, because it was something else the culture kind of would push to be fun and popular.
Yeah.
And so my senior year, that was fun. I was able to finally participate. Never really got too drunk, but it was college. I went to Texas Tech for like a year and a half or 2 years, but never really. I never picked a major. I went to really try to re-identify myself within in college, like reinvent myself.
Yeah. Did you know, like, after high school, now I have the summer, I'm heading towards Lubbock, going to Texas Tech. Were you thinking about the identity thing? Like, I want to reshape who I am. I really want to change.
Yes, but school was never a thought. It was, okay, I get to like join a fraternity. I get to party, and I get to, just start over in that sense. And this was my first time being alone without mom and dad.
Sure.
Without any serious structure other than me and my own self-discipline, structuring myself. And so it was just a big dramatic change quickly. And it was good, but it was like, it's like a good change like it should be. But what happened was I was not ready for it. And I want to say my grades suffered tremendously. I joined a fraternity. I'd probably do it different had I got to start all over. But so the drinking got real bad. There was a lot of blackouts. And there a lot of things I thought negatively about myself, because even throughout high school, there's always been shame has been huge. And just believing I'm this bad person, and I need to prove to myself and others that I'm actually this really good person. And I want to say in college, a lot of the negative thoughts, and I call them shame tapes. I play these little tapes in my head about how bad or terrible of a person I am, and hearing some of that out loud sometimes from peers because I got too drunk and did something, really, really bad, and or said something really inappropriate at an inappropriate time. It got it was repeated out loud, and it was just like, it was really crushing. And so I hid again, but the way I would hide was, I found another friend group, and I would still drink, and I started smoking a lot of weed as well during that time. And what's funny is not funny, but what's ironic is how fast I kind of got into that, I guess, stoner culture, just quickly escalating to like smoking a lot every day. And it was just, looking back on it, it was definitely like, okay, that was a quick progression from never doing it before to doing it all the time. Yeah. And if I'm sure any reasonable person would be like, okay, there's probably a problem. I probably shouldn't be doing this. Yeah. Of course, it was something that I could, I guess, feel like I felt belonging to. I didn't feel alone when I was with other people being able to do that, at least at the time. I guess another theme would be loneliness and feeling loved and trying to earn that outwardly would be probably a big theme throughout my story up till sobriety. But
so you talk about that phrase, shame tapes. That's easy to remember. I think a lot of people have tapes like that that may not lead them necessarily to alcohol or other drugs, but often to something that's not healthy, not really hearing the truth about who they are. And then you bring into that your idea of observing culture. Who am I? Where do I fit? Who do I want to be? And then loneliness. And a lot of people struggle with loneliness. Yes. Even those that give the appearance that they're not lonely at all are often very, very lonely, very insecure in regards to how they see themselves. That those two things coming at you pretty hard, suddenly you find yourself in a place where I'm accepted by this group that's doing these things with me. So loneliness in a way seems like it's kind of taken care of. Yeah. But in moments when you were sober, like, and I don't know how long you were, like in between, like, was it hours or days, or was it kind of a constant, no, I'm pretty much intoxicated on something. Okay. What was that like? So it progresses quickly because tech didn't work out.
I did not do well in school, so I got academically expelled for like a year. Had like a suspension, and then just, didn't focus on grades again, and ultimately had to come home. And then...
So tell me about that. Like, so obviously something's not going right at school.
No.
Your parents have to know, okay, this isn't going on. But how much of your story did they know at that point?
They didn't know much. And they didn't know until I ultimately told them I needed to go to treatment, or I needed help.
Yeah.
I couldn't stop on my own. And so at that time in college, I didn't have to have a drink, but really wanted to, I guess, with other people and things like that. But I guess when I saw it myself, and the powerlessness of, like, I would say needing to have a drink to function, or to, just to function and feel okay, was when I was home after Texas Tech. So
so how long were you at Tech?
I was probably a year and a half.
Yeah.
And when I came home, I was working. And I remember the first time I poured a drink by myself in the middle of the day, well before 5 o'clock, like most people, 5 o'clock somewhere.
Right.
And then...
but for you, it was more like...
It was probably like 10, 11 in the morning.
And you felt like, I can't make it without this.
Well, it was the way it progressed.
Yeah.
Because I remember the first time having it by myself, because I've never drinking alone by myself to that point. And then drinking, and then not being able to stop. And just, I would never, like, there's a couple different kinds of alcoholics. I was an alcoholic that had to continuously feel a buzz. And so my drink of choice was scotch, and I would try to, I think I ended up drinking like a fifth to like a handle. It depended on if I was gonna go out and party. Just like, it was at least a fifth of whiskey or some sort of hard liquor daily. And it was, I remember the first day it started, and it lasted like 3 months. I think I had like one day where I didn't drink, but it got bad to a point where I remember pouring like praying and swearing, I'm not going to drink today. I'm really not going to drink today. And then pouring a glass of scotch with tears in my eyes, knowing like, okay, I can't
Not do
this
it.
isn't,
That had to be terrifying.
Yes. It was, not having control, period, is terrifying. And really not, just being powerless in that moment. Reliving that moment is just very, it's a great reminder of how not in control we really are. And it was the worst and best thing to ever happen to me, if that makes sense.
I think it makes sense, but I want everybody listening or watching, I want it to make sense to them. So why would you say it that way?
Well, it was, I want to say that day, I was, like, I was praying, I was outside, I was smoking cigarettes, just praying, asking God, what's happening, where do you see me? And it was like the first mature thought I've ever had. It's like, okay, where is my future going? It was the first ever, and I didn't plant that in my own head. That was not something I was doing at all, ever. And so it was a great, like, the Lord put this thought in my head. So I sat there and tried to really visualize, okay, where am I going to be? And all I saw was some darkness, and me panhandling under like a bridge. So like under like, there was a toll road next to where we were. And I remember growing up seeing a guy panhandling in that area before, and just seeing myself there being that guy panhandling, and that was very terrifying. And I broke down and talked to my parents that night, let them know, hey, I need help, I need treatment, I can't stop drinking. And that was the night that they opened their liquor cabinet after me sharing that, and then really seeing, okay, how much of their alcohol I had already drank. And just...
Because they really had no idea.
No, they didn't want to know either.
Yeah. Because it's scary. It's scary to admit that there could be a problem.
Exactly. Yeah. And it was, that was the moment God intervened and truly changed my life.
So when you were praying, you have this kind of a vision of what your life could become. It's very dark.
Yes.
What gave you the courage then to take that step, to go inside, say, Mom, Dad, I need to talk?
I gave up.
So surrender.
I surrendered completely. I said, I can't do this on my own. I don't know where to go. All I know is y'all to ask y'all to help me. I need some sort of intervention. And luckily, I have been blessed with at least meeting a few people who have been sober before, which gave me an idea that that was an option. And so, that's when we started looking for treatment centers. And and then the rest is history.
So when you talk about looking for treatment centers, so you had seen or heard of others who've gone through some treatment, who've gotten sober.
Yes.
Right. And then, so you said we began looking for treatment centers. Were you active in that? Was it your parents doing that work for you? A little bit of both?
It was me. And I think they reached out to a guy named Chico West and got a few treatment centers, like a list of good ones.
For those listening, if you haven't seen one of the earlier previews, I interviewed Chico West on this very topic, and I know we'll talk about him more in a minute.
Yes. And I want to say I needed to be I was told to look for a faith-based but 12-step focused treatment center. And so that landed me in Kerrville, Texas at La Hacienda. And that was, I want to say my first full days sober was November 6th of 2010.
Okay.
And
so coming up almost 12 years ago.
Yes.
Wow. All right, so you go to La Hacienda.
Yes.
And what was it like traveling down there? Were you with your parents? Were you with somebody else?
I was with my parents.
Were you scared?
I wouldn't say I was scared. I was nervous of how it was going to look.
Yeah, because it's unknown.
Yeah.
It's not anything you've ever done before.
And I guess whatever fear was left was how are people going to respond or react knowing that I'm going to treatment. But I was also like, I don't care.
You were desperate.
I need help.
Yeah.
I can't do this alone. And I was one of the few very willing people to go to treatment.
Because sometimes people obviously don't want to go, don't think they need to go, they're not far enough along in terms of rock bottom that they're willing to go.
Yes,
you were at a different place though. You were like, I've got to go.
Yeah, a lot of times it's court ordered or intervention, and so it's either go to treatment or you're getting kicked out of the house. That was mostly of all the people that I was in treatment with there.
Yeah.
A few people, very few. Like I was one of the very few that wanted to be there, that were willing to be there, that knew we needed to be there. And and so I was there for about 38 days. Learned everything about the steps. Prayed the most I've ever prayed.
So at that point, did you have a relationship with Christ? Were you a follower of Christ, or were you just kind of praying if God exists?
That's a good question, because it's changed completely. And this is why I would do it all over again, because I didn't have a real relationship with Christ. I said I did. Yeah. And that's everything I did in high school. And as you say you're a Christian, and you pray, and you try to say smart things during Bible studies, and then you're seen as a good kid. Yeah. There was no real relationship, because I never wanted to do anything for God. I wanted to serve myself, and that's still a daily battle every day for me. But
for all of us.
But then it was like that was never even. I never even knew that was something you had to fight daily. Yeah. I just remember, I think, being told that by a youth leader at one point, saying getting closer to Christ is just, waking up every day and trying your hardest to live every day for Him. And I remember, I don't want to do that. I want to be able to drink. I want to be able to have fun and cuss and do this and that because that's fun and it's very instant. It's instantly gratifying.
Right.
And it feels good quickly.
If it didn't, it wouldn't be appealing, right?
Exactly.
It wouldn't be a problem, but it does give that illusion of this is where real life exists. This is where real fun exists. That seems a little stuffy and not very fun. So go this way.
And since then, since treatment, it's been it's the complete opposite. It's okay. I still have my bad days, but it's very much a relationship with Christ.
Yeah.
And what's so amazing is what most people are afraid of is in sobriety, they're worried that being sober is not fun, or even people that don't really want to give up themselves fully to Christ because it doesn't sound fun either. It's changed my whole perspective. And being sober, it's been like what keeps me sober and what keeps me alive is that relationship with Christ.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't be possible without having, alcoholism. Being a recovered alcoholic is, it's all because of Christ.
So how far, a lot of people watching or listening to this probably have never been involved with somebody that goes to treatment.
Yes.
The child didn't go, or they're an individual hasn't gone. So you're going to a place, you're getting dropped off, you're moving into a program, you don't know how long it's going to be, you might think it's about 30 days or so. So talk about that. Talk about that journey into that. What were the thoughts you had going through your mind? What were the fears you had? Were you having a reaction to not having alcohol in your system? How long was the detox? Things like that. I'd love to know.
When I first got to treatment, I want to say I had a few days of detox. I think they separated people that were detoxing from the rest of the community. And so where we were, the detoxing group would be near where all the nurses kind of hung out.
Yeah.
And where they handed out the meds just to make it easier.
Yeah, because it can be very hard.
It can. I did find out that I had very slight liver damage, which I was very surprised about, and I was very fortunate to hear it wasn't permanent. It was nothing permanent. It was.
So you were surprised because you thought it probably would be permanent.
Yeah, I was worried, and it was a wake up call as well. I knew I drank a lot, but I had drinking so much that my liver was taking all the punishment and was actually being damaged. Was kind of. That opened my eyes even more to, okay, wow, I really was drinking way too much. Because, most people, me personally, felt invincible, having like an iron stomach and just being able to do anything and get beaten around like in sports, thinking I was invincible,
Right.
And so this was really good for me to hear that. And then I want to say within my first week, I got the cold sweats real bad in the middle of a meeting and just felt really crummy. It was like feeling like I had a fever or the flu for like a couple hours and just feeling really anxious and uneasy and shaking a little bit and having to go down and, and that was a withdrawal symptom.
Yep.
And that was also, very eye-opening for me.
Because he showed you just how much control this substance had on your whole body.
Physically and, physically as well.
Yeah. So then, as you're moving through treatment, kind of talk through the steps you're going through and how you embrace those, and at what point did Christ become, the intimate relationship that you would have?
So I think insurance was one of the reasons I got to graduate a little bit early, because I was supposed to be there for 60 days. And also, I want to say after 38 days, I had graduated there, and I thought I was going to be just going home. But I was able to learn a lot of step work within those 38 days. At least I did like 1 through 4. So I got a good chunk of like an inventory, almost completed the majority of it. And so I was able to, while at the same time a bed opened up at a place called Gaston House.
Yeah.
And that's a place at Chico West.
Started.
Yes, started. And that was my first real introduction to the steps and just how to live sober in general and how to really lean on Christ and make that a daily choice, and how to just really live for Christ, and how to really pray every day and really pray throughout the day.
Yeah.
And pray before going to bed at night, and just real relationships, not the ones that were, at college or with drinking buddies in high school. Real, like, hey, I care about you kind of relationships. I want to say that first week was probably first month I was at Gaston House was the closest I've ever been with God in Christ. There was most I was praying and just trying to do something different, and just asking for His guidance and being very thankful. I was very, very thankful throughout that entire time. Just thank you for taking away this alcohol from, like, I don't have to fight, not drink anymore. Like, it's surprising how something so hard and difficult can make me so thankful and grateful that I'm at a place where I am right now, and it's not because of what I've done.
Yeah.
And it's not because I did it. There's some work, but it's God placed the right people, the right places, the right wisdom, and just the right role models in my life at that time to get me to where I was. And I remember having to get a job and getting one at Raising Cane's, and so I was like, I'll do anything. I'll even work in the kitchen. I was flipping toast that tastes so good, but it was burned my fingers a little bit here and there, and just even being like, it's okay. At least I'm here doing this, and that's the last thing I would have done if I was in high school.
Sure.
Or that first year and a half of college. I would have thought there's no way I'm way above this.
Yeah.
But at that time, it was completely different.
So gratitude, and that's part of the steps, it's a big part of recognizing that. So can you remember, looking back, at what point you began to see God's hand in all the different ways? You went through a slew of them right there, but it's like the people He put, the wisdom He gave. Even 38 days, God knew that number, that you'd be in Kerrville. Then I'm assuming you went straight from treatment to Gaston House.
Yes.
You don't get to go on another trip or a field trip. You go straight there.
I don't get to go home and pack another bag either.
Yeah, the bed's open.
It was door to door.
Door to door. I like that. So it's door to door. At what point did you realize God is really in the midst of all this? He's orchestrating this in order to rescue me.
Throughout the entire thing, to be honest. But looking back on it now, it's the amount of wisdom I have learned and gained, and insight and friendship, real relationships. Not being afraid to be vulnerable, not being afraid to share how I'm feeling or how I'm doing. Learning how to say no. I don't learn how to say no because I was such a people pleaser. I still am a little bit, but not to that extent.
Yeah.
And then learning how to speak real truth and love. All these principles were from Gaston House, which I'm so grateful for.
How long were you there at Gaston House?
I was 8 to 10 months. I can't remember exactly, but about 8 to 10 months. And then, throughout that time, I was able to get a better job and worked at, my first job that I really loved and stayed at for a while was at, I worked at St. Bernard Sports as a sales associate for a while. And that was a great experience. So a lot of this gave me real life experience too. I took my time to go back to school and finish getting my degree. And it was great because God was there the entire time saying, like, it's okay. You don't have to rush. This isn't a race.
Yeah.
Patience was learned. It was never a fight because it was a relief to just not kind of give up and just kind of let God do his thing. And then,
which really is the first step, right? It's coming to that place of surrender, but that's not just a one-time thing. That's that becomes a daily reality, which that should be true of all of us, not just those who are in the midst of or coming out of or still fighting addiction. And the idea of, I love how you said you would hear God, it's not necessarily the audible voice, but it's the clear message of patience, of gratitude, of wait. Where else did you hear that? Was it you talked about real relationships? You've used that phrase a few times. And I think that's one of those statements where it can just pass people over.
Yes.
But I think it's critical. So talk about, what did you learn real relationships look like?
So I thought I had the best of friends in high school. A lot of them I'm still close with, but I mean, most of those were just drinking, party relationships and very surface level. There was never any talks about, hey, I'm afraid and I'm about to do this thing and it's making me feel this way, or like, hey, I'm struggling at home. My parents are on me or are on each other, or my brother or other family members are having issues. Like, there was never anything like that. It was very much, we're just gonna, okay, it happened. We're not gonna talk about it.
Stays here.
Oh yeah.
Stays right here. Yeah.
Because there's still a lot of. It was at the time. It was still fun to make fun of people. It seemed fun. It was funny guys would they'd pick things to pick apart, and you didn't want yourself picked apart.
Yeah.
And so that was basically the dynamic of all my relationships before sobriety, and the relationships I made and friendships I made in recovery. And it changed. It changed from, like, my best friends were people who were going to call me out and say, hey, you're being very selfish, not wanting to, like, you have the time, not wanting to give this guy a ride. What's going on? Or, hey, you spend a lot of time just on your own. Is everything okay? Tell me what you're thinking. And being able to really share what my thoughts were and what I was thinking, because that's the last thing I wanted to share with anyone. And how important and impactful that hey, what are you thinking line, and really has been, how powerful that is, and especially with people I'm close with.
Yeah. I meet with a gentleman I have for years in the church, good friend, and we'd met maybe a few years, almost every week. And at some point we got to that place where it's like, all I need you to ask me is, what have you been thinking about? Because whatever I've been thinking about is going to be centered on passions or pain, right? It's going to be, what am I excited about, but also what am I afraid of? There might be some other things in between that aren't substantial, and then we always would move to the next level of, so anything else you're not telling me? And of course, we could lie to one another if we wanted to, but when you're in deep relationships, you don't want to. You want to be known, and the other person you hope wants to be known as well.
Yes.
But boy, there's so much fear in that until we get to a real place of real desperation for what God can offer through those kind of friendships.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm very grateful I've been able to transition that into this church. There's a reason I came and joined Park Cities Press, and it was, I remember going to a Bible study with Philip Coons, and it was at John Bateman's house, and just, it was like the biggest difference from the Bible studies I grew up going to in high school. It was kind of like you were forced to go because your parents dropped you off, and you were there for an hour until they picked you up.
Right.
And it was more of a I want to be there and need to be there kind of attitude. And Philip was one of the guys I was able to talk with. And
did you know Philip prior to?
Yeah. Because we grew up together.
I was going to say, were you all in the same class or close?
Yes, we were in the same class. We were on the same 6-fam football team as well.
Oh, right.
So
Okay.
we were on the Broncos together. It was me and Philip and his twin Ryan as well. And so that was a blast.
Because I had both of those guys along with a bunch of your other friends in Bible study. For a few years when you guys were in high school, you were just at a different church.
Yes.
But and Philip, had kind of a similar story in terms of looking the look, but then going to college and that's his story to tell, obviously, and he has.
Exactly.
It's a great story.
Yeah.
So anyway, you've really taken what you experienced in treatment. It's further saturated at Gaston House, where you're really beginning to understand how these things. But then it's like, okay, leaving there after 8, 10 months, whatever it was, it's like that has to continue, and there has an element of that kind of authentic, transparent, real relationships, sustaining, your sobriety, sustaining your desire to live for Christ.
Yes. I would say Pat Hoban has been a huge blessing in my life as well, to transition that from the steps to the church.
Yeah.
Being able to be a part of redemption groups, which is just like, it was really like a small group, which is what I was very used to, the small group kind of counseling sessions.
Yeah, because
that's
what you did.
Spilled everything out. Like that's what we did at Gaston House. That's what was great about the structure of Gaston, is being able to really simplify intense feelings and being able to slowly backtrack and pinpoint exactly, okay, why might I be acting or feeling this way? And it was amazing, because I was able to use my story in general to relate with others in the church and not feel judged and still feel loved and actually feel loved. So that was always the thing I was fighting for, was to try to win love from others.
Yeah.
To fight the loneliness feeling.
Those shame tapes, right?
Yeah.
They come back.
Same reason I would push people away and isolate. Exact same reason.
Yeah.
And so
when did you do a redemption group?
I was part of the pilot and stuck with it until I forget how long. It was probably about 5 years, 4 years, 5 years. That it had been going on, and made amazing friendships through that. And
so describe what a redemption group is.
Well, when we first started, we went through this book. We'd always go through a book, but there was a specific book by John Wilkerson. I think it was, I forgot the name exactly.
That's okay.
For You by Jesus, from Something in the Wounds We Carry. I forgot exactly. I hope you cut that out.
That's all right. We can find it in the show notes and put it in.
And it was a very intense book. Very intense book. I know a lot of people weren't. Most people that aren't, I guess, familiar with kind of just intense stories in general, which I was able to witness and be a part of, just being in treatment in general.
Yeah, sure.
Just that whole crowd. There's a lot of stories, a lot of war stories, and it's oddly, you feel peace about it and happy that you're a part of that community.
Because it's real. I mean, it's like, this is really happening. It's intense, but it's real. It's how broken things can be.
Exactly. And also being around those kinds of people that have no filter, tell you how it is also great. But we would read a chapter a week, and we'd have like 30 minutes of, like, there would be some, like, we'd sing, and then it'd be 30 minutes of like a lecture or a sermon. I don't like calling them lectures, but
some kind of message somebody's leading.
There'd be a message, and so Pat was really good at being able to build good messages out of the content that was in there, and then we'd take that because there'd be a focus on it. There'd be like a theme for each chapter, and then we'd go into our small groups, and they were mixed generational. And
did you like that?
I loved it.
I think that's great too.
I was able to be myself and share my story and be impacted and be helpful and impactful to others as well. Yeah. And a group of guys that were much older and my age and a little bit younger as well.
Yeah.
And it was really special. It was very, it just felt very like this needs to be here.
Yeah.
This belongs.
And really, I believe deeply that redemption groups or some form of that needs to be something every believer participates in.
Yes.
Because it actually shows you the power of Christ and the hope that we have in him as we see our stories of rescue.
Yes.
Helping one another connect the dots, not only for how he's been faithful in the past, but how he's being faithful right now. And sometimes you just can't see it.
Yes.
And all of a sudden somebody else will point it out, even if it's a hard thing to hear, like, hey, you are being selfish. Sure.
Yeah.
Have you thought about this, Mark? No, I haven't. Thank you. I don't really want to. Well, let's drill into that. Why is that present? And those things are really helpful.
It was amazing because it was like small group counseling style. It wasn't like your normal Bible study. It was you. I think what we had to do was everyone at some point had to share their testimony, like a quick 10-minute uninterrupted testimony, and that really meshed well with having everyone come closer together and knowing each other well.
Yeah.
And then also being able to be like, when someone would share, and we wouldn't share we'd share some about the chapter, but it was mostly about our lives and what we were going through and our day-to-day and what we were struggling with. And then being able to say, hey, that's great because I remember in your story you did this. And how is that tied into, I guess, how you're feeling or made you decide to, I guess, do something or not do something with what you just shared. And it was very great. It was a great way to, because most of the time when that happened with me, someone would do that with me, I wouldn't see it. I needed someone else to point that out because it would be pretty, something very shiny and just in your way for other people, but not for me. For me, I couldn't see it. And that's what was so great about that kind of small group.
Yeah.
Being very vulnerable and open and honest.
Yeah. Creates that authentic, real relationship where you know how to pray for one another. But also shows you, again, just the real presence of God.
Yes.
In a specific moment, meeting a need, giving direction, offering himself, when we might want to retreat or feel isolated, as opposed to remembering, hey, he's everywhere present, he's all powerful, he's all knowing. And he has, if we're in Christ, there's no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus, which is an amazing thing.
Yeah.
I need to hear that all the time.
John Bateman shared that with me in another psalm, but Romans 8:1.
Yeah.
And I think Psalm 40, verse 1 through 3, just kind of broke me down one day at Kubi's in the morning.
Yeah.
Because I asked him to disciple me, and it was really, really special. Just how everything so easily transitioned from treatment to Gaston to the church, to relationships, and to how I carry myself now, how I view and look at the world.
Yeah.
How I use everything I've learned to the best of my ability, and especially with the help of Christ and God in my heart, and how to reorient back to reality and back to a place with him. It's been very special. It's a miracle.
It is a miracle.
And
it's God's story of rescue in your life. So today, what do you practice? What's every day look like for you? When you wake up, what do you read? What do you think? What do you continue to practice to make sure, that first love, the love for Christ, your dependence upon him, continues to be at the forefront of your life?
I wish I was someone that could wake up and just really go after some of those morning devotionals.
And by the way, I want to be clear. We all have different personalities.
Oh, yeah.
Some of us wake up no matter how long we slept and we're like Tigger, just ready to go.
Yes.
Others, it's just going to be a slow process. Whether I slept 6 hours or 9 hours, it's just going to be slow. So I'm not trying to create any kind of benefit of if you get up in the morning and then you're really a godly person.
Yeah.
I'm more interested in how do you start the day and begin to immerse in, the truths that you need to live by?
Just community is the biggest thing for me. I guess right now my girlfriend and I are like going through a devotional, but I get more, what impacts me the most and what draws me closer is those coffees in the morning and those relationships, those one-on-ones, those really vulnerable and just kind of sensitive and just kind of guilt-free conversations with, my brothers and sisters. The Bible studies specifically, they're a little bit more intense and focused and just on kind of guiding me to, okay, this is Christ. I need a constant reminder. This is what Christ brought me from and dragged me out of. It's so easy to, I just in addiction and alcoholism in the recovery world, to think that you have it again and to, leave God behind again and try to take the reins and control everything. And it's just a great reminder to, that's not the case. I'm alive today because of Christ, and that's why I need to focus on Him today.
Yeah. There's a book, I think it's called Ruthless Trust by Brennan Manning, who wrote Abba's Child, which is one of my favorite books.
Reading that now.
Are you really?
Yeah.
You like it?
I love it.
It's really powerful. I don't think I knew grace or understood grace until I read that book. And for another time in another podcast, I'll tell you that story because it was when my life really changed. Because of actually very similar things. It didn't translate to me in any kind of substance abuse, but there was still, you talk about shame tapes.
Yeah.
And looking in constant observation of who I'm supposed to be for this group of people. And it wasn't like, I was not in high school anymore, and yet it was still very present. And what it did in my life is it kept me from being authentic. In other words, I had learned how to give a portion of my heart and a portion of myself away so that others would do the same. But I was never giving myself fully.
Yes.
And even to my wife and even to the Lord. So a guy called me out on it. That I literally had just met him. His name was Ken Cope, and this is in Nashville. And we were at a conference, and he was speaking actually on divorce. And I was a youth pastor, so I was trying to learn everything I could. And he said, "Why don't you come down? I have a question for you." And he said to me, "I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to ask it to you once. You don't have to answer it, but I'm only going to ask you once." And he said, "What's wrong?" I was like, "You don't know me. I don't know you. I don't even know." He said, "I told you I'm only going to ask you once." And I said, "I don't know, but something's really wrong." And we had a really interesting conversation. He read me like nobody ever has. And then he told me to read Abba's Child. So I read Abba's Child and realized how much I had been protecting my heart from everyone, including God. And so that I went through my own journey at that point of learning to surrender to who He is, and particularly to what He says about who I am in Him. So grace became brand new. I've been offering it to everybody else, but not to myself. So anyway, Ruthless Trust is a book he wrote. And in that book, he says, the greatest attribute of a trusting disciple is gratitude. So earlier when I kind of picked up on that, so I went down that path. Daily remembering. You think about the Bible, how often did they forget? Just time and time and time again. And so do we. And so stories, and I think the reason why stories are so important and why I think Deep Light's so important is it connects the story of God's faithfulness, not just in the scriptures, clearly it's there, but also in how the history of redemption continues to unfold in our lives together. So I didn't know all this about you. I knew some of it, but not all of it. And as I hear your story, it just reminds me of how great God is, how good God is, but also how profound sin is and the evil one that seeks to bring us down. I mean, it's really, really powerful. And He doesn't stop. We're told He roams around like a roaring lion seeking someone to devour. That's why I asked that question. So what's the day look like for you? And you immediately, and I'm not surprised by this, you immediately went to the power of relationships, where you're sharing the means of grace with people. You've mentioned John Bateman, who's a good friend and elder in our church, Philip Coons. These are all men who love the Lord and are walking with the Lord, who could say the same things we're talking about right now. But there's a verse in Hebrews 10, 24 and 25, it says, and let us not give up meeting as some are in the habit of doing, but let us encourage one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. And I love the encouragement that we're able to bring one another from our own experience with Jesus. Yes. Just like you may not realize it, but the encouragement you've brought me today, just in telling your story, is powerful. And as I listen to you, I'm really trying to be present in the moment. That's one of the things with Deep Light is, I don't bring a long list of questions. I know we're going to have a conversation on this topic, but I really want to be in the conversation and this may sound selfish, but it's for my own benefit too. It's like, I'm going to grow and learn more about God's grace.
I can't hide my performance with illicit interview questions.
Not that that's wrong for people to have some kind of guide, but it helps me be present so that when I hear something like shame tape, I'm like, oh, that's an interesting phrase. So one final question. Maybe, there might be more. We still have a little time. How do you still deal with shame tapes? Oh yeah. Okay.
Daily.
I knew that was probably going to be your answer. So what do you do with those now? How do you deal with that?
I pray. Sometimes I try to handle it myself because I'm broken, which is good because I have to rely on Jesus. Yeah. And so I would say a lot of what I've learned from Gaston House, there was a lot of what I learned from going to AA meetings and doing the steps. This is why I'm just very blessed and fortunate to have that as my story because it's really simplified. How do I identify those feelings? And then when I get there, it's okay. How do I make amends, or how do I find rest once I get there? And it's always to pray and give it to Christ. And it's really just to surrender those things to God. And it's another form of surrender. It's another thing that is very hard to replicate daily, but very important. And
not just one time a day.
No,
right? Just like when it comes, just like, now I'm gonna surrender that to you.
Yeah. So like, I guess the best example is of kind of what I have to, the few things I have to go and think about is, okay, if I'm upset, what's affected? Is it like, is it my pride, my ego, like my pocketbook? Is my wallet affected? Are my relationships affected? And what caused those? Was it selfishness, self-centeredness, pride, ego? And then just in the moment is just kind of feeling, what am I feeling? Is it like, anger, guilt, shame, pain, loneliness, joy? And just really being able to use just those simple, like they're all just one word. And it kind of gets me down to a place of, okay, this is where I am, this is what I'm feeling, and this is all why. And now it's time for me to really just pray about it and give it to Christ and really rest. And that's not, it's very hard, but it's also very simple at the same time.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
I love how you explain that, because for a lot of people who aren't familiar with the steps, who've never done anything like a redemption group, they probably haven't a thought about what those look like, but they really are something that becomes so practical that you're able to go through a process that helps you identify those things. Yes. Especially if you're in Christ and you have the power of the Holy Spirit helping illuminate what those things are. I you use that term shame tape. I think I use the phrase imaginary conversations a lot.
Yes.
Where, it is the same thing. I think shame tape sounds cooler, but it's the idea that I have a thought about this person or this event. This is what I'm thinking about it. And one of the blessings that I've known over the last several years from the Lord is just kind of hearing the Lord. And again, it's not an audible voice, but it is his voice. That is, stop having imaginary conversations and let's have a real one.
Yes.
This is what's true. This is what might be true, but you don't know if it is. So why don't you live with what you know is true? But that takes time. It takes space. It takes, I think, community too, where I need others to help me think through what that looks like. And the benefit of that is truly incredible. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for sharing parts of your story. It's very encouraging.
We can share more over a cup of coffee, but that's one of the reasons I like this little podcast is that people can hear how something's working in a person's life today. Not just the testimony of the past, that too, but how is it working today? I know there are people listening today that are probably in the midst of addiction, or they have a loved one that's in the midst of addiction, but also people who are just, though there may not be a substance that they believe is controlling their life, the shame tapes might be, the fear of man might be.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Everything I've learned is all the themes in my life. It's helped me read the Bible as well, look for themes, but like I'm no different from someone that doesn't struggle with alcoholism or addiction. It's just like the themes are all there and they're all the same. They just look different.
Yeah.
The details are different, but like the underlying like feelings and pain and like just I guess anger and everything there is the exact same.
Yeah, yeah. And the cycle of addiction, restlessness, irritability, and discontent. Chico, if you haven't seen his episode, he talks a lot about that cycle of addiction, which is really just a cycle of sin and the way in which it occupies our hearts and minds and why we need one another. Well, thank you, brother. I'm really, really grateful. This has been a really rich time for me personally.
Thank you.
Yeah. If you're watching or listening, we want to say thank you. And I hope that you've been encouraged by what you've heard. If right now you're in the midst of any kind of struggle, it doesn't have to be with alcohol or other drugs. It could be anything. It could be just sadness. It could be depression, anxiety, whatever. We want to walk alongside you. And there are many people in the body of Christ that do. You can reach out to us at deeplight@pcpc.org. And we'll get back with you and do everything we can to help you. You can also call our church offices at 214-224-2500. And we have pastors and lay leaders like John Bateman and Philip Coons and George, who would love to walk alongside and encourage you in any way we can. You might be watching from some other part of the world. That's the great news about the technology of today. Call us or email us. We would love to walk alongside you. We really do believe, because of our experience in the hope of Christ, what we see in his revealed word, but also what we see in our own experiences with him in our life. He really is the way, the truth, and the life. God bless you. Thanks for watching. I hope you have a great day.
We would love for you to be our guest at Park Cities Presbyterian Church as we gather together for worship on Sunday morning at 8, 9:30, or 11 a.m. We are located in the Uptown Dallas area at the corner of Oaklawn Avenue and Wycliffe Avenue. To find out more, please visit pcpc.org.